Are you doing your future self a favor, or are you creating a mess for your future self to clean up? I don't know about you, but this past year for me has been full of major decisions. And if you are someone who is struggling with making a big decision or even a lot of little decisions in your life, definitely keep watching because I am going to be talking today about how to make decisions with confidence. I know for a lot of women, making decisions can be a struggle because we often go into people pleasing mode and we want to make everybody else around us happy. And a lot of times it ends up making us unhappy or we don't necessarily get our needs met. And so I thought it was really important to do a video for our community about how to make decisions with confidence and alignment with our values and how to get our needs met when we make these decisions. Welcome back to Truthatude TV. My name is Lindsey Servin, and every week I put out videos that help women just like you build their self-confidence. Now, this doesn't always mean, making life or death decisions or big daunting choices. Sometimes it's the little decisions that we need a little bit of help on, and sometimes we question ourselves before we make a decision and we don't always necessarily trust our own judgment. So I'm hoping that this video will help you in that instance to trust yourself a little bit more, feel more confident when you're making choices, big or small. So keep watching. One of the most important things I would recommend when you are faced with a decision, whether that's a big decision or a little decision in your life, is to lean on your values. And it is really helpful if you have a value statement written. Now, if you don't, you're in luck because last week's episode of Truthatude TV discusses just that. I dive deep into how to craft your value statement. So check it out. I'll leave a link somewhere around here for you to check out that video after you watch this one on how to define your values. So starting with your value statement is a great place to jump off when you're making a decision in your life. It could be a small decision or a bunch of little tiny choices or a big decision. So knowing your values and leaning on your value statement is a perfect way to start when you're faced with a choice to make. You kind of use it as your guiding light. And that's why I think it's really important to have it written down so that you have kind of your standard operating procedure, if you will, when it comes to making decisions in your life, because we're faced with a ton of decisions all the time. The second thing I would recommend when you're faced with making a decision is to ask yourself if you've made a similar choice in the past. Have you faced this challenge or this decision in the past? And how did you come to a decision at that point? Was it an easy choice for you to make? Were you pressured into going a certain way? Or did you know, just based on your instincts, what the right thing to do was in that moment? And is any of that applicable to the situation that you're facing now? Can you use any of the wisdom that you learned from that previous time in that similar situation to this present moment? Is there anything that you can pull back and say, okay, I know I faced this before. And when I made the decision back in that time, this is what I did and this is the outcome. Now, you might look back at your past and see something that you were faced with before and be like, yo, I'm not making that same decision, right? And that's a learning experience, right? That's a good thing to look back and say, okay, I've been through this, I've seen this movie, and no, we're going the opposite direction this time. That is a really good way to lean on your own previous experience, your own wisdom, when it comes to making a really important decision or even just little decisions. I think it's really important when you're faced with particularly a big decision, a choice that is going to have impact on your life in a significant way, to pause, reflect. Do not make a knee-jerk decision, even if you feel like you don't have the luxury of time. Take a beat. Because I don't know about you, but most of the time when I've made knee-jerk decisions, they probably weren't the best option. Now, that is not to be confused with making a decision based on your instincts. Trust your gut, girl. Trust your gut. However, take a pause and decipher, is this my instincts kicking in? Or is this an emotionally charged knee-jerk reaction? Only you can decide that for yourself. Sometimes we make decisions and we think it's based on instinct, but it's really based on trauma. And it's a response to a previous trauma. Or we make it based on an emotion. Not to say that your emotions are not valid, but they're not the only ingredient when making a confident decision. So yes, follow your instincts, but marinate for a second to make sure that it really is your instincts that are talking. Next, when you're making a decision, especially a big decision, or even a medium-sized decision, it's really helpful to visualize the outcome. I know that if I go down this road and I make this decision, this is the potential outcome. Is that an outcome that's favorable for me? Now, obviously, I'm not asking you to be a fortune teller. We can't always predict what the outcome will be. But life gives us a pretty good indication of how things will play out if we just take a second and play the movie in our minds. We can usually understand, like, okay, if I stick my hand in the fire, it's probably gonna be burnt, right? Like, we kind of know things. But if it's something that's a big decision, it's stressful or really important, and you've never faced this kind of decision before, then yeah, I mean, it can be difficult to know what the outcome is, but you can at least visualize what the options might be. I will caveat all of this to say that sometimes, majority of the time, overthinking can be a disservice to you. That is not to say don't take your time, contemplate your options, think things through, sleep on it sometimes. But sometimes, if you're anything like me, you tend to overthink or over-research, which is something I'm really guilty of. A lot of times we end up giving ourselves information overload, and that takes us further away from our intuition in a lot of instances. And so I urge you to be cautious with overthinking a decision and letting your anxiety get louder than your intuition, and also getting way too much information that can end up clouding your judgment when really deep down you probably know the right thing for you, especially if you're making a decision that's in alignment with your values. A lot of the time, the answer is already within us, and so we don't really help ourselves anymore by getting too much information and then getting overloaded, right? A lot of times, if we just sit in peace, think about our values, and listen to our inner knowing, which is a very quiet voice, the answer ends up being inside us all along. Your intuition, your true intuition, is never going to guide you in the wrong direction. That's not to say that your intuition will lead you to make a choice that doesn't hurt, but it's not going to be damaging. It might be painful because it might be a difficult decision, and the answer that's good for you may not necessarily feel good for you. I know that if you look back in your heart of hearts, you can remember a time when you made a decision that was good for you, but didn't feel good. Okay, we've all had those, and we ended up being thankful that we made the right decision even though it was painful. So try not to fall into the trap of information overload. Get the facts that you need, get the information that you need to help you make a decision, but in the end, lean as much as you can on your intuition and your inner knowing, because it will always guide you to your highest good. I will also add that when you're faced with a big decision, I know it can be frustrating and we can overthink, right? And I will just say, be gentle with yourself, be patient with yourself, and trust yourself. Trust that the answer is available. The right solution is available to you. And if you sit with yourself and you reaffirm your values and lean on them and lean on your intuition, the right choice will reveal itself to you in time. If you're, just don't let yourself spin out. If you just sit, take a beat, as much time as you're allowed in whatever your circumstances, to really allow yourself to be open to the answer, because I promise you the answer is available to you, and just keep reaffirming that to yourself. The solution does exist. Just over and over, the solution does exist. In addition to sitting, taking a pause, and listening to your intuition, it's also really helpful to ask yourself, is the decision I'm going to make, is the option that I'm choosing going to help my future self, or is it going to hurt my future self? Now, I know that you may not be very familiar with your future self. If you have not met her yet, take some time, think about who you envision your future self to be, get to know her. And I know that sounds really woo-woo, but just, let go of that resistance and do your future self a favor. When you're making this decision, really think about it. Is this going to hurt my future self, or is this going to help my future self? Am I doing her a favor? And then in the reverse of that, think about your younger self. If you were going to go back and tell your 13-year-old self or your 5-year-old self, you're going to make a decision and, as your older self, and it's going to help you. It's going to be good for you. Are you doing your future self a favor, or are you creating a mess for your future self to clean up? When you think of it in that instance, are you creating a mess for your future self to clean up? It's amazing how clear things start to be. When you are marinating on the choices that you're making, the options that are in front of you, let's say you're facing a big decision, I think it's really important to write it down. Sometimes when we write it down, it can be really helpful for us to kind of think about or try to conceptualize all the possible outcomes, all the different roads that you can go down. Now, don't go crazy with this. Don't overwhelm yourself, but just think, okay, I'm facing a decision. If I go down road A and I go all the way down that road, what do I think is going to be the most likely outcome? Or if I go down road B, same question. If I go all the way down that road, what is the outcome likely to be? And then option 3. And taking that time to kind of visualize all the different options in front of you and what their potential outcomes can be, and whether or not each of those decisions leans closely or away from your values statement, that's going to help you gain a lot of clarity. And I know it sounds like this overcomplicates things and it takes a lot of time, but if you're faced with a big decision, it's not something that you should take lightly, and it's not something that you should do in 5 minutes. If you're facing a big decision, instead of overthinking it and spinning out and worrying and being anxious, get yourself organized and say, okay, these are the options available to me. Here's what I think might happen if I choose option A or option B or option C, right? And if I lean on my values, my guiding light, my moral code, my personal principles to help me make that decision, I can trust myself because I already know what my values are. I already know what I stand for. So as you lean more and more on your value statement and your personal principles, or whatever you want to call it, decisions will become easier for you. And then you'll have a bank in your past of decisions that you've made. And when you face similar things again in your life, you'll be like, oh, I already know what to do here. So I know it seems like I'm asking you to take a lot of time and, overthink things, but it's really a matter of masterful thinking versus worryful thinking. And there's a huge difference between that. So like I said, if you're not even sure how to begin making your decisions based on your values, I highly encourage you to check out my video on how to create your value statement. And I also have an exercise that's available to you called Defining Values. And that's where you actually get to craft your value statement. And I think it's really helpful. Actually, I know it's really helpful because this is something that I actually do in my real life. And I've been faced with a lot of big decisions this year. And it's something that's going to be super impactful, whether you're making small decisions or big decisions. So I really encourage you to check that out and to write your value statement. Before I end this video, I wanted to stay true to this little tradition we've started this year and leave you with some journal prompts. And maybe these will help you with your decision that you have on your mind. So the first journal prompt is, how do you make decisions now? What was one of the best decisions you've ever made? And how did you know what to do? What was one of the worst decisions you've made, and what did you learn from it? Is there a decision, big or small, that you're putting off? What's holding you back? How can you improve how you make decisions moving forward? And speaking of journals, I've created a couple little journals that you can purchase. And if you haven't started your journaling journey, then that's the perfect time. You can buy the little journal that I have created. I'll leave the link in the description box. There's 3 versions. They're super cute. So, support a small business. And also get your journal on. Thank you to all of the new subscribers who've shown up. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to check out the series Cafecito y Chisme. I'll have another juicy episode ready for you next week. That has been such a fun little project for me to do, and you guys seem to be liking it. So definitely subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of my videos, if you want to continue to build your confidence alongside the other ladies in this amazing supportive community. I really appreciate your support. You guys continue to come back and watch the videos, but you're not subscribing. So, some of you are. Some of you know the assignment. So the rest of you that are coming back, make life easier on yourself and subscribe to the channel. Help me reach my personal goal of 1,000 subscribers. That is like a little dream that I have, and I really want to get there. And I think that we can do it together. So that brings us to the very end of another episode of Truthatude TV. As always, stay true to the Truthatude. Ciao!